Welcome to a new meeting of Power Alliances, a space to accompany the process of self-knowledge and continuous transformation, talking with people and souls who cultivate their unique being, share their life journey, enrich us, provide us perspective, and open possibilities from their own experiences. Today, we have the honor to hear part of the Arielle Guttman journey. It's an honor to be here with you. So let me introduce her.
Ariel is the founder and director of Sophia Venus. She brings over 40 years of experience in using the language of astrology to people seeking answers and guidance about life's questions. Also, Ariel offers a range of astrology services from classic natal chart readings, relationship readings, as well as her unique Venus star readings. Now she will explain us a little bit more.
Hello, Arielle. How are you today?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me. It's nice to be here.
We will begin with the heroic path, life journey, in Anna's journey, in a way, going down in the process of incarnation and discovering ourselves. It will be a pleasure to hear about your process of individuation and the cultivation of your wisdom. The first stage would be the call to adventure. So if you want to explain to us what was the context of reality which you began to feel stagnation?
My journey into astrology began in 1973. I am an American, and I had come to Europe for the first time that year. And I traveled all across Europe. And although I didn't get to Spain, and I want to go to Spain. I have been in Spain since then, but at that time I did not get to Spain. But my journey took me to Greece. And in Greece, right at the Acropolis, right on Athena's hill, right up on top of the hill, I discovered both mythology and astrology, and that they were more or less related. And I was just overjoyed it was as if there in that sacred precinct of Athena, it's as if that information was coming to me. I was with a companion at the time, a traveling companion, who was explaining all these things to me about mythology and also astrology. And I was so intrigued. I had never delved into astrology before in my life. And so I was intrigued. All I knew was my sun sign, and that was it. And he said, no, there's much more. There's much more. So when I went home from that trip, I started buying books in astrology and reading. And then I signed up for a class, and then more classes and more books. And pretty soon I was all the way in. And 6 years later, 7 years later, I began my professional practice in astrology, 1980. And I've been a full-time astrology consultant and teacher since then, and also tour leader. I co-lead tours to Greece, to the sacred sites. And I have a colleague that I work with, and we bring people over here that come from all over the world to see the sites and kind of just get steeped into the mysteries of, what those places offer us, because it's so much more than just an archaeological site. The guides will tell you, oh, this is an archaeological site, and these stones are this big, and, and they weigh this much, and all of that. But we're more interested in the energy that they produce and what we can, the mythology of the place and how it works, how it comes into our personal lives. So that's always very exciting when we are journeying through there. And I live in Greece full time now. So I go back to the States occasionally, but I'm pretty much a full-time resident of Greece. And I really love it here. I love the energy and it allows me to do the things that I love to do most, which is the writing and the research and all of that. So that's pretty much how I got into astrology. It was a surprise. I didn't know what I was going to do at the time. I really thought I was going to go back and go into psychological studies. But when astrology came along, it just kind of grabbed me, it seized me. My early studies in astrology were psychological astrology. So, in a way, I did combine the two. I have been working from that point of view for most of my time with astrology, is working with the psychological components of the person as seen through the birth chart. And I also work a lot. Another thing that happens in Greece here in the ancient sites is Asclepius, the healing god, was the god of dreams. And I also work a lot with dreams and dreaming. And I work it through mythology and the archetypes and also the astrological chart. So when people want to know more about their dreams, I listen to their dreams, but I'm also looking at the chart, the birth chart, sometimes also the transits, what's happening now, and to just see, oh, there's a particular transit, because dreams often come in, there are themes
Mm-hmm.
that come through that are repetitive for a time period. And you might be dreaming about the same thing or similar things in a certain time period. And you can usually look at the chart and tell from the transits of the planets what that theme is and how it's related to that particular dream. So that's an interesting way of delving into the psyche or the psychological component as well,
Mm-hmm.
because dreams are so interesting and rich as far as their content, but they are sometimes a puzzle. Sometimes we're like, what was that? That was such, we will wake up and say, what a crazy dream that was. But then when you start putting all the little pieces together, you see, oh, okay, it fits like a little jigsaw puzzle, you know.
Amazing all that you are being opening in these few minutes. Going a little bit backward, when you arrived to Greece and you discovered all the astrology, did you realize that you could not do it alone in a way?
Well, I had to study with teachers. I had to go home and learn it. But I did realize that this is what I wanted to do. I had that, I it just shot through me like a lightning bolt. It was like, that's it. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to do this.
It was very clear. That is amazing. And in any way, sometimes in that process of discovering yourself, some fears can appear, some lack of confidence could be.
Yes.
What fears have emerged during that process to you?
Well, I did have fears initially because I think being an astrologer carries a lot of responsibility, and you're advising people on things, on certain conditions and recommendations. I don't predict this is what will happen. Instead, I talk about the planets and what period they're likely in and what the best choice might be for them at the time. But I still say this is your choice. If you go this way, it's going to be rough. If you go this way, it might be smoother. But if you go this way, the rough way, you might get more from it. You might learn more, and it might in the long run be the right choice. So it's always up to them. And yes, I did have those fears, but I will say this about working with people, is because when I encountered astrology for the first time and did my own chart, saw how my own chart was working, it was such a revelation. It was so much of me and all the questions that I had about my life and which direction I should go, and is, you know, why is this doesn't work for me, or why don't I get along with my family, or, is there something wrong with me because I don't fit into, the family I grew up in and the community I grew up around. No, my astrology chart showed me, no, of course you don't fit in. Of
Mhm.
course you are different. You are very Uranian
Yeah.
and Neptunian, and you do not fit into the mainstream of the community and the family and all the things you grew up learning. Because I always had a problem with those things. I always questioned them, but I never openly challenged them. I never said, oh, this is wrong. I don't believe this. I stayed quiet and just went along with it. But I knew that there was something about that program that wasn't for me.
Mhm. And so, what has been the most difficult obstacle that you
Oh,
mentioned?
the difficulty,
Mm.
yes. Also with astrology, there was a Delphic oracle in Greece, the Oracle of Delphi, and many people came to visit the oracle in the ancient world to find out what would be their fate, what would be their fortune. And the oracle's response, if you read the responses, it was very enigmatic. It wasn't that clear. It was like, well, this could happen or that could happen, or if this happens, like the famous question about the war, should we go to war? And the answer was like, a great nation will fall. And so the person who went thought, oh, it's the other guy that's going to fall, but it was his nation that will fall. So it was like, yes, somebody's going to fall. But the oracle was somewhat enigmatic in terms of never saying a direct yes or no. And I think astrology is a lot like that. We can't really say yes or no because the planets, each planet on sign and every component really of astrology has 360-degree meaning, depth, breadth of meaning. And it's not, you can't reduce it to one little yes or no or one little keyword. We look at the chart of the person, we look at the time period we're in. It's like comparing the two and seeing, okay, what's going on around you in your world, and how does that help you right now, help you move forward in your life.
How does your resilience manifest? Because in that decisions that we take, it's like, all right, again, how I can make a new step forward.
Yeah, it's up to the choice. It's up to the moment. It's up to the person, really.
And in that return path, that the way back when you find all that treasures, integrating the lessons and elaborating that new experience that you mentioned, what lessons have you learned during your heroic path?
So many, too many.
Right.
How many hours do you have for me to, you know, I think I think life is all about learning lessons. We learn lessons every day. Yeah, many lessons. But I think more and more we get to the core of who we are, who we really are, who we truly are, and what resonates for us. That was the other thing. I was looking for a belief system. I did not believe in religion as it was being taught and practiced, from the major religions that the world has. And yet I had a strong belief in something. I didn't know what, but I knew there was something. I knew there was something that we couldn't just be thrown into this world randomly and not have any reason for it or any purpose for it. So I was asking those bigger questions too about what is that? What connects us all? And is there something that connects us all? And is there a purpose? And is there a higher guide? You know, some people call it God. You could call it a guide. You could call it a goddess. You could call it a universal energy, whatever. But it's like a spiritual connection to something outside of ourselves and something also that's inside of ourselves. It's both inside and it's outside. And it connects us to, you know, sort of that greater purpose in life. And astrology actually satisfied those answers for me, because just being in sync, being in harmony with the planets, as far as knowing what's happening and how they're working as they're going around, you know, helps you understand that, okay, you're not in the wrong place, you're not in the wrong time, you know, everything is happening as it should. It's all unfolding as it should.
Wow. And what is the treasure you brought back from your inner journey and discovering?
Well, I feel like it's my work,
Yeah,
you know,
maybe this one is
well, that's one of them. Yes, I
total
have a
one. I
few.
have several books of you here, but that
Yes.
Venus, you were talking now about the relation and harmonizing. It was Venus coming up. How was that discovered?
Well, that was probably the greatest feeling I've ever had in my life, in terms of, you know, transcending the physical. And when I did get that information about Venus, when Venus started, as it were, the intelligence of Venus began to speak to me. And I was asking questions that I didn't even know what the questions were at the time, because I didn't know any of that. Though it's in that book, I didn't know any of that. It was like it just all came, you know, it all came. But I was researching retrograde patterns of Venus. I was looking, and listen, this was 30 years into my astrology practice. I wasn't looking for a new system. I was happy with the way I was reading chart and working with people and working with my own understanding of it. But this came through while I was researching the Venus retrograde, connecting the dots, and there was the five-pointed star, the pentagram, which I had heard about. I knew there was a pentagram involved with the Venus orbit, but I really didn't know, what does that mean? How does it work? Where do you find it? And then when I started putting it all together, dot, 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 connecting the dots, there it was, you know, and I could see it in the zodiac operating. And then from there, there was a rapid succession of questions in my mind, like, oh, well, then where is it next? And where is mine? And are we all born with this? And how does it move? And, you know, it was like all this very curious Gemini mind of mine, Mercury in Gemini. So my mind is always busy asking more questions. You know, what does it mean? And how does it work? And all that. The answers just kept flooding. And so I was writing things and drawing stars, drawing star after star after star, and looking at different time periods in history, looking at people's charts. My clients I was working with at the time, they would feed me, because it just so happened while I was doing the research, they would come in and say, well, you know, the family's having problems right now. So I would ask for the birth dates of all the family members, just the date of birth, don't need anything else, to find the Venus star point. And then I would put them on the star as a family grouping. And there it was. It was what, yeah, this one's feeling left out over here. This one doesn't have anybody over in her corner. She's totally alone. Everybody else is in a little grouping here, but this one's totally alone. And yes, that's exactly what's happening. So that was helpful because everybody that was coming to me at the time was helping me learn more about how it's actually working in everyday life. And what amazed me was, Venus is the planet of connection, relationship, love. And so I would expect that the relationship component would be there. But what surprised me even more was the historical, because the Venus star transits so slowly through time. It's a slow moving clock moving slowly through time, that it really describes historical events as well. It in long periods, like 100 years at a time, 100 years of Venus star in Scorpio, for instance. We're used to Venus transiting through a sign in a month or a little longer when it's retrograde, 3 months. But to have it in a sign for 100 years, the whole, the Venus star coming through a sign for 100 years is quite important when you're looking at the larger cycle of what's operating, the conditions that are operating on the work on Earth, from the cosmic energies of Venus. And the cosmic energies of Venus in that perspective is more like, what is the world investing in? What is the world valuing? What is the world loving and feeling connected to? Whereas our own Venus star pointer, all those things, but for us, what are we valuing? What are we investing in? What are we loving? How are we connecting to something? So it's like on the small scale and then the greater scale as well. It's working out. So, and, I had to stop where the book ends. I had to stop because it was already so much, but, information just kept coming and they say, oh, you're going to make another book. Well, no, I didn't make another book, but I'm teaching that a lot now in my courses. I'm teaching that material. It's a never-ending learning process because material keeps coming to me all the time as I'm working with new charts.
Is opening the
And
light,
you
right?
are working with it too. I know you were working with it a lot, so you must have some great stories as well.
Yes, a lot. It's very interesting and exploring the Inanna journey and going down and doing all that observations and updating all that meanings and identifications and flourishing in a new levels is amazing, Venus.
In our next video, we could share
A little bit about the next Venus star point in Aries.
Yes.
It's very important, that meaning with Saturn and Neptune as well, changing signs. A lot of meaning to explore properly. And I have some more questions about your daily life landscape, if you want.
Okay.
A little bit for knowing more about Ariel,
Okay.
the
Sure.
perspective of life and how he gives about that values. So how do you start the day?
Normally I start easily. That wasn't always the case. But right now, I'm at a stage in life where I can wake up gradually, have my morning tea or coffee, whatever. And I've had different practices in the morning. They change over time, but right now I'm very involved with yoga, chair yoga, because it's harder for me to get up and down off the floor and just not as limber as I used to be. I did yoga many years ago when I was more flexible, but so I do chair yoga now. I've also done Qigong, something that helps me do breathing and stretching and opening and keeping my joints flexible and all of that. And then after that, I have my breakfast, whatever that is, small, usually not too much. And then I wander over to my computer, but I tend to not rush over to my computer in the morning. I used to, let's say 10 years ago, I used to, first thing in the morning, I'd just turn on the computer and just see what was happening. And then I would go take care of myself. But now I don't, because once I'm at the computer, it's hard to get away from it. There's too many things, there's strings of emails. I'm in Greece now, so it's a 10-hour time difference from the West Coast of the United States and 7-hour difference from the East Coast. And so during the night while I was sleeping, all these emails come in, a whole string of them. But fortunately, I don't have to answer them right away because by the time I get up, they're sleeping. So that's why I can take my time and start a little bit slower and go into the day a little bit more gradually. When I have clients, I have usually one morning appointment, one afternoon appointment. The afternoon can be evening also, like later in the afternoon, because again of the time difference. It just depends what part of the world I'm working with. So that's usually it. And then, I take walks. I live by the sea, so I like to walk by the sea and take walks every day, get some fresh air in between the computer time and be with friends. Right now, this time of year, there's not so many people here in the winter, so it's a quiet time. It's very nice, but as we get towards spring and summer, everybody will start arriving, both visitors and people who are staying like for the whole season, and then there will be more social engagement too. But right now, I've got classes I'm teaching and webinars I'm doing, and so I'm spending a lot of time on Zoom working on presentations, PowerPoint presentations to teach my classes and to
Sharing your wisdom.
yeah. And it's interesting because there's so many young people coming into astrology now, and that's really, it's gratifying because they do see me as like an elder, like, somebody that has the experience or the wisdom or whatever. So it's nice. It's kind of feels like that's very rewarding to me to have these young people that are coming into it and really eager to learn the same way I was when I was young and wanted to learn so much. And I was just like, I wanted to know everything.
And what do you value most?
Value most? Oh, my relationships, my friends, my relationships, my loved ones. Yes, I think at the end of the day, it has to be that, you know. But I'm most thankful for, I mean, I value those, but I think, in the end, we just have ourselves when it comes down to it. And I'm very thankful and grateful for what astrology has shown me, and for what how that still satisfies me so much. It's really a satisfying thing to be working with in terms of giving me something joyful and also exciting, or also sometimes frightening. Like, oh my, what's that going to be? You look ahead to you see certain planet configurations and you say, oh no, what is that?
We keep exploring. And what are you interested in learning about?
I have a new field in astrology that I want to go into now more. It's the first thing I've been excited about since the Venus star, and the Venus star was 21 years ago that I got into it. And now there's another field, there's another little not so well-known part of astrology. I like going into the back, not the things that everybody's talking about up front, but things behind the scenes. And I'm very interested in planetary nodes right now. They are like the lunar nodes. Everybody knows about the lunar nodes and works with them, but not very many people know about the planetary nodes. And all the planets have nodes, and they all have kind of like, almost like I could say it's the higher self of the planet or the soul of the planet. Like Saturn and Pluto have their north nodes are in Cancer, and their south nodes are in Capricorn, and they are very close together for a very long time, for centuries. They're very, very close together. So when you think about it, there's a Saturn Pluto thing, energy operating in our world behind the scenes that we are not even aware of. But it feels like it. When you look around at the world and how it's run, it feels very Saturn and Pluto a lot of the time. But you think, well, there's no Saturn Pluto aspect happening right now. How can that be? Why does it always feel that way? Well, it is that way. There's always one operating behind the scenes. So the north node's in Cancer, but also Jupiter's north node's in Cancer and the south node's in Capricorn. So Jupiter is there too. So Jupiter and Saturn are more related than you think they are. Although Saturn's node is closer to Pluto than it is to Jupiter. They're about 10 or 12 degrees away from Jupiter, sometimes 15 degrees because they move a little bit. But Saturn and Pluto don't move as much, so they stay much closer together. So I'm exploring things like that and the effects of history again, and the greater cycles and how they affect people who are born with planetary nodes on certain ones of their planets. For instance, Neptune's north node is Leo, and its south node is Aquarius. So I think Neptune has a lot more of the Leo Aquarius energy when it comes down to it, And I think of Leo especially because Leo rules entertainment and actors, the drama and the stage. And I think of Neptune as that. I think of, people, especially entertainers and people in the arts. They're coming through Neptune. They're either putting on a mask to perform in a play, or they're creating something that's like an illusion or from a dream or from a vision. It's very, I think it's very Neptunian.
Yes, and the multiples voices that we can feel inside ourselves is like acting the multiplicity in a way, Neptune. Yeah, very nice. Being
Right.
a vessel of that sensibility or resonance with the whole in a way. Very beautiful. And also the nodes of Venus as well, a small piece to open a little bit more all the Venus's meaning. Beautiful.
Yes. The helio node of Venus is in Gemini, the north node, and it's with Uranus. So Uranus and Venus are always together too, very closely in that relationship. The helio nodes don't really move at all, hardly. The heliocentric nodes. The geocentric nodes move more. So Venus's geocentric node will move back and forth. It will go all the way to the edge, and then it will come back again, and then it will come this way and then back. It's like an accordion, going in and out. But the helio node is permanently, at least for these centuries, with Uranus and right around mid-Gemini. That's why the Venus transit, which happens every century and a quarter, happens in Gemini or Sagittarius because it's happening on Venus's node. So, you know, it alternates between Gemini, Sagittarius, Gemini. So that's a really vibrant part of Gemini and Sagittarius. It has a lot of that Uranian Venusian energy to it.
So interesting. And another question, what is home for you? Where or what's the meaning of home? Can be a metaphorical sense if you want, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, where I live and what is home is not always the same.
No, it depends.
I think home is inside. And so it goes with me wherever I am. But where I live, I have lived in many places. You know, I've lived in different parts of the world. And right now I'm here. But who knows where I will be 5 years from now.
And what memory do you have from your childhood?
What memory that is what, special or?
What comes to you?
I was kind of a free spirit as a child. I had a very playful energy. And yeah, I just really like to have fun and to do something offbeat, I guess you could say, a little bit offbeat. Yeah.
Good. And what do you enjoy doing?
Besides astrology, I love taking walks in nature, swimming in the sea. Photography is a passion of mine. I've been a photographer since I was in my teens. And I used to actually sell my photos when I lived in Santa Fe. When I first arrived in Santa Fe, I was taking photos of the Southwest, and the landscape there is very unique. And I sold several photos to different shops. And then the big photos were harder to produce and harder to sell. So I decided at one point to start making little photo cards just from small photos and putting them on cards, greeting cards, blank. And the shops loved them, and I had many, many orders for cards. So for the first few years there, I produced cards and kept going out and photographing the landscape. But that is a very favorite thing for me to do, is to go on walks and photograph nature. And just not so much people. I don't photograph people, my friends, yes, but not strangers. But definitely nature and interesting things that I find on my walks, you know, interesting patterns and whatever. And it's so funny because the first photography class I was ever in, the teacher talked about the golden mean and how our photos needed to be framed within this golden mean or golden section pi ratio. And that's exactly the Venus orbit. It's the golden mean, it's the golden section. And so I've never forgotten that. And he said, you know, artists use it, photographers use it, architects use it, designers, all people in the arts will use that golden mean in terms of how they position things and how they create. So I always thought, oh, there's our Venus, you know.
Oh, we can see all that special pieces of meaning in our journey as well.
Yes.
And what routines are healthy for you?
Well, walking is, and right now the chair yoga and the breathing exercises, and what else? Oh, swimming. When the weather changes now, when summer comes, I will be swimming in the sea quite a bit.
Good. And what do you cultivate in relationships?
Honesty and integrity and sensitivity, special connection. Yeah.
Hi. What gives you meaning?
Oh, a lot of things we've already talked about. Yes. And I think really gives me meaning is knowing that there's love, that there's always love. That I think that the final answer is love.
Yes, yes, yes. That is the answer to all. What is your vocation right now?
As astrology.
Is
Yes.
And how do you see the future?
How do I see the future? I see all kinds of possibilities with the astrology going on right now, looking at what's ahead. 2025 especially is I'm calling it the brave new world, because all the big planets are changing signs, and and it's not just any sign, but Saturn and Neptune are crossing from Pisces to Aries, and that's like the last of the last sign to the first of the first sign. So it's like it's not just going 1 degree this way, it's like going all the way around the circle. And now we're here at the end of a era. We're at the end of an era, and we're at the beginning of a new one. So there's always excitement about going into a new era. Oh, what's that going to bring now? Because I'm ready for things to end. But on the other hand, there are certain things I may not want to end. And is it going to be better in the new era? Is it going to be worse? So there's all those questions that come up for that. And I think we're going to see both. In some areas, it's going to be terrible, and other areas, it's going to be very promising. I think we have a couple of years of transition to get through this. It's like a couple of bumps in the road.
And do you want to share a dream, also in a metaphorical sense, if you want, about this, how you can imagine a constructive or loving world?
I actually am very influenced, believe it or not, by the television series and then the movies that were written by Gene Roddenberry, and it was called Star Trek. And they depicted life in the 23rd, or I think it was the 23rd century, and maybe the 24th for the next generation. But the vision of the future, when they talk about Earth in the past and how it used to be and what it is now, is so it's a vision I like to hold on to, even if it is science fiction and even if it is just one person's imagination. But Star Trek has such a huge following worldwide that I think it's captured a lot of people's imagination. And so a lot of people believe in that same future. And that future is good for the most part. They're still battling people from outer space and different species, and they're going off on, these things. But Earth itself has overcome a crisis or two, and people are, for the most part, getting along, and getting along without money, and getting along without sickness or disease, and getting along without poverty and without starvation. So it's the future I want to see.
And what connects with your being?
That's a big question. I think I would say just having a sense of groundedness, and feeling secure, feeling confident, and feeling hopeful at the same time, like, okay, things are going to be okay.
And what kind of music do you like in that Neptunian resonance? What moves you?
Well, I'm kind of a child of the 60s, so I love the music of the 60s. I just recently saw the movie A Complete Unknown with Bob Dylan, with Timothy Chalamet playing Bob Dylan, and I loved that movie, and it brought back the music of that time. I love the music of the 60s and the early 70s, and I still listen to a lot of that. But I also like the music that started coming out in the early 2000s, maybe the 90s, late 90s, that was electronic, like the rave, the kind of the dance, the ecstatic dance, and the rhythms like that. I kind of like that too. And always liked classical music as well. So yeah, I have different timelines for my music, like the classical music way back, and then the music of the 60s and early 70s, and then kind of around the 90s. Because in the 90s, when this electronic music started happening, Uranus and Neptune were conjunct. They have a very long cycle, and they don't come together very often, like 175 years or something, 73 years. And so they were together, and Neptune has to do with music, and Uranus is very electric. And so all this electronic music that started coming in, and the waves and the raves and the ecstatic dance, I did for a while, and I still do when I can, a dance called Five Rhythms. And do you know it? Do you know it? It's
Yes,
around
yes.
the world. They have teachers everywhere that do it. And the music they play at the Five Rhythms is very much like the music I'm talking about now, you know. And it's interesting that it's five rhythms, because again, Venus is the 5-pointed star, and the five rhythms have to do with our rhythms of life as we move through life.
And in order to finish, do you want to share a closing statement or send a message to our audience?
Well, I think what's gotten me through life more than anything else is to just keep believing in myself, and that I'm not going to let other people, I'm affected by if other people maybe want to put me down, or, verbally attack me or something. I'm like, well, where did that come from? But I don't necessarily take it in, like, it's not my problem, it's their problem. And I think people should just listen to their heart, tune into their intuition. I've let my feelings and my intuition guide me pretty much throughout my whole life. I've never questioned it. Other people have questioned it. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? But I've never questioned it. If I get something coming through strongly, I feel like I've got to follow through with it, no matter how crazy it sounds at the time. And I would say that for the most part, that's true. I haven't really gone astray following that, following that inner guidance.
Very
And
important.
sometimes I go to seek outer guidance because I want to know, am I, does this sound crazy or should I do this or whatever? People will say whatever they're going to say, but in the end, it's always like it's up to you. You gotta figure it, how does this feel to you? And so that's what I would have to say to people today, is just to kind of believe in themselves and also listen to their inner guidance. And the other thing is, just because we're in the times we're in today, is that there's some very nasty people out there, like in social media and on the internet, and you don't have to become one of them. It's not necessary to engage in the fight. And we don't have to keep fighting each other, because I think the message of the songs in the 60s that I'm really still connected to were that, that love is the answer, and that love is all there is. And I want to believe, I do believe that, and I want to live my life that way.
Wow, thank you very much, Ariel, for sharing your time and all your experience and these messages. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you. And who knows what's to come next? It's always, I'm pleasantly surprised when I wake up and something new emerges that I hadn't even thought of before, and it just gets me excited.